Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Victoria Tippins and I am a birth educator, and I've been attending births for 15 years, and I created the Peaceful Birth Method, which is a 5-step process to help parents feel confident and prepared for birth. One of the steps that we're going to focus on in that 5-step process is specifically pushing and reducing your risk for tears. So I'm going to give you just a little introduction on what tearing is, the implications of tearing, what we can do to prevent it, and kind of go deep into those 5 different steps to help you reduce your risk to the best of my ability within an hour. So I'll give you some tips for each one of those steps. Maybe just to begin, I'll offer a little bit of information around what is tearing, why does tearing happen, and why does it happen at the rate that it does? Because tearing is very, very common. Unfortunately, in the US, 67% of moms tear when they're giving birth, which means 33% of parents do not tear when they're giving birth, which is insane. And you would think that nature works a little bit better, but the reason why so many people tear when they're giving birth does not have anything to do with our bodies, and it has everything to do with a evidence practice gap and a system that does not in any way support people in protecting their perineum, because 95% of moms in the United States give birth on their back, which is the worst position to give birth in and absolutely will increase your risk for tearing. In addition, directed pushing, where we are telling the parent to hold their breath and bear down and push to the count of 10 as hard as they can with every contraction. And we start pushing as soon as the mom is 10 centimeters dilated. That is also going to increase your risk for tearing. Provider hands-on, when the provider is touching your body and your baby, when your baby is coming out, that will increase the risk for tearing as well. So why do we do that? There's this idea that it's easier for the provider if you're on your back and they can touch you and manage everything. I don't see how that's easier for a provider if it increases your risk for tearing, because then they have to sew you up and makes more work for them. You would think that providers would want to do everything they can to support you in reducing that risk. Many providers out there that really do everything they can to support their patients. But there are other providers that are just used to doing things a certain way. We have research that shows that obstetricians today are very limited. They're very limited in their ability to support delivering in upright positions and to protect the perineum that way, because they learned how to deliver babies with the mom on their back. So they don't even know, some providers, how to support you. I have a mama in my coaching program. I'm supporting her in creating a plan for how to have an upright birth with a provider who really wants her to be on her back. And she had a conversation with her provider and she said, "Don't want to be on my back. I want to be upright. Are you experienced when supporting babies coming out in other positions than being on their back?" And he said, "Yeah, I've done some side lying before." She was like, "Okay, cool. I want to be upright. Can I be upright during delivery? Are you experienced with that?" And he said, "I'm really uncomfortable with that. I don't know how to help your baby come out in a upright position, in hands and knees. I don't even know how that would work." And he said, "Could you send me some videos?" Because she was like, "You're going to have to be comfortable with that. I'm going to be in hands and knees." And he was like, "Okay, can you send me some videos?" And she was like, "You want me to send you videos on how the baby comes out in a hands and knees position so you can show you what that looks like?" He was like, "Yes, I don't know what that looks like." And you call yourself an expert and an obstetrician, an expert on birth, and you don't know how to deliver a baby in a hands and knees position. Unfortunately, that is just the reality of today. All around the world, providers are more limited. The evidence practice gap means that it takes 10 or 20 years or sometimes more for current research and evidence to make its way into policy and practice. So what that means is that everyone was trained so that you birth on your back, and then new research comes out that says actually birthing in an upright position protects the perineum. We should have people doing that more. And then it just takes some time for people to start to implement what new research and evidence has to say. And every single provider is so different. How I like to address supporting moms in protecting their perineum is in my coaching program, come up with a personalized plan around how we're going to protect your perineum with your provider. If you want an epidural, if you want to birth unmedicated, there are all these these different factors that impact the advice that I give. And so what I'm teaching you today is a class. It's like a free live training. And this live training, I'm giving you general information on what the research and evidence has to say and what my wisdom has to say from what I've learned on how to decrease your risk for tearing. But I just want to emphasize the difference between taking a class and getting information and then getting personalized support, which means that we're creating a personal plan around your provider, around advocacy, around your preparation, because all of that matters so much when it comes to protecting your perineum. It's not just about like using the warm compress and being in the right position and that's going to protect your perineum. Because if you know, for example, you want provider hands off and you know that's going to protect your perineum, how are you going to advocate for that in the moment? How are you going to do advocacy work beforehand to reduce the risk of advocacy you need to do in the moment to support you in actually having that preference be met? That's the difference between getting personal support. If you want, you can book a free birth breakthrough session with me, and on the call, we will clarify exactly, and I'll also put on Instagram for my Instagram live people. We will clarify exactly the steps that are needed for you to take to feel confident and prepared for birth. A lot of moms come to me and they're like, I took a birth class, I read some books, I've been watching reels on Instagram, and they're like, I know some information, but there are still gaps, and the gaps are in the personalization. Like, I teach birth classes in my community. I've been teaching for 7 years. And in all of those classes, I give the same kind of information, but it's like this general information. And then moms have to go home and figure out how they're going to personalize that information to them and organize that information and integrate it. And that's where personal support and coaching can really be helpful. Haven't booked with me already? Book. It's free. So let's go back into tearing. And so what is tearing? Tearing is when the perineal tissue has a tear or a separation. A lot of people think that perineal tearing is just your perineum, right? Like it's just like down below where the vagina opens, and that part is what is going to tear. And perineal tears actually have a little like vulva, like prop I can show you. So the perineum is basically like this gathering of tissue right at the very base of the vagina. But other places that can tear are upwards. You can tear up towards the labia. The labia can tear a little bit. So there are different ways that the body can tear. Tearing, I want to say first, just to remove some fear, is something that happens naturally with birth every once in a while. It's not something to be super afraid of, but it is something that can potentially lead to pelvic floor dysfunction, pain with sex, peeing when you jump on a trampoline, right? It can make recovery more painful. It can make recovery more expensive. I think a lot of people aren't willing to invest anything in preparing for their birth, but then they don't realize that investing a little bit of time and energy and money saves them time, energy, and money after they have their baby, because pelvic floor therapy can be $100 to $300 a session. Even if you have insurance, it could be 50 to 75 copays. And if you need to do 4 or 5 sessions, like that can really add up. So sometimes if we invest time and effort and even a little bit of money into preparing for birth beforehand, we can really reduce the risk of tearing. Tearing is rated on a scale from 1st degree to 4th degree. So 1st degree tears are just a tear to the skin. It's like kind of a little nick, typically does not require any stitches at all. The vagina and the perineum and the labia, that whole area has a lot of access to blood. And so it heals and repairs very, very well. Your body was designed to expand to the point where a baby can come through and to be able to recover and come back. And sometimes when we expand, we can have a little bit of tearing. There are so many ways to prevent it. And if it happens, your body can heal it most of the time on its own. Even a 2nd degree tear, which goes a little deeper into the muscle. If you're willing to stay in bed for a couple weeks and keep your legs together and not like be running around doing a bunch of stuff super quick after you have your baby, you can decline stitches. I'm not telling you to decline stitches. I'm just saying like it is an option. That's how well the body can heal. Every once in a while though, we do get a tear that we really do need to repair with stitches. If they do repair you, they'll give you an injection of lidocaine typically. You'll feel a poke and a burn, but after that, that will numb the area. They can also give you a numbing topical spray first before they do that, and then they would suture the tear. A 3rd and 4th degree tear are very, very rare, and those just go deeper into the muscle. Those are known as OASI, or obstetric anal sphincter injury. So typically an obstetrician needs to repair those tears. So if you're having a home birth or a birth center birth with a midwife and you get a 3rd or 4th degree tear, that is one reason why you might have to transfer to the hospital after you have your baby to get obstetrician to repair that tear. And I will say that I never saw a 3rd or 4th degree tear. As a student midwife, I've been attending births for 15 years. As a doula, a student midwife, like 4 or 5. I took like kind of a year break in those 5. It's been 5 years. Wow, yeah, but I took like a year break here and there to have my 2 boys, so I haven't been doing it consistently. But I did consistently for almost 3 years, and during that time I never ever saw a 3rd or 4th degree tear, because in the midwifery model of care, those severe tears are less likely. And the reason why those severe tears are less likely is because midwives are not typically routinely doing directed pushing. They let people birth and labor in the water, where that warmth is supporting the perineum. There's more of a hands-off emphasis, more of an emphasis on listening to your body. And also, unless your midwife is in the hospital, if you're doing an out-of-hospital birth, midwives don't offer like out-of-hospital epidurals. And epidurals do come with an increased risk for tearing. But if you're wanting an epidural, you absolutely can have one and still avoid tearing. It's just important that you really understand how to push with an epidural in a way that is going to be protective and supportive to your perineum. Because if we're following along the whole, like, lying on your back, legs stretched back as far as we can, we hold our breath and push down as hard as we can, epidural or not, all of that is antithetical to what best protects your perineum. When we are lying flat on our back with our legs held back so far like that, what's happening is that we're creating more tension in the pelvic floor and in the perineum. So if you can imagine, on the back of your legs, it's called the posterior chain of muscles. So there are all these muscles that stretch all the way back from the back of your legs all the way to the perineum. And when we hike our legs really far back, what we're doing is we're putting a lot of pressure and adding tension to the perineal tissue. So the perineal tissue is now suddenly like this, it has tension. And then when the baby's head is coming down and it starts to put pressure, what that's going to do is it's going to add more tension. So then we stretch even more. The perineum can only stretch so much, it can only tolerate so much tension before it finally tears. So to reduce tearing, we don't want to be like keeping our legs hiked all the way back like that. Instead, we want to bring our legs forward and let them just rest naturally open, so the perineum is more like this and less like this before the baby even meets the perineum with its head, if that kind of makes sense. So if we go into the birth space just like hoping for the best, I hope I don't tear, my provider knows I don't want to tear, and they're just going to do their routine things, because of the evidence practice gap, it's very likely that you will experience intervention, directed pushing, telling you to be on your back, pulling your legs back, holding your breath to the count of 10, provider hands on, all this stuff, stretching your vagina when the baby's coming out. None of that is going to do you any favors routinely. On a case-by-case basis, there are reasons why doing a little bit of directed pushing, doing a little bit of perineal massage during labor, being hands-on can be helpful. But routinely, what the research has found is that doing all of that intervening does not improve outcomes. Let's go into the 5-step process now. I think that's like pretty good intro on tearing. My name's Victoria. I have been supporting moms and helping them to feel confident and prepared for birth and reduce their risk for tearing. And throughout that time, when I was like kind of trying to figure out what is really going to help reduce tearing risk, I discovered some really specific tools that are the most effective, and that will in a second lead me into step 1 of my 5-step process for reducing tear risk. And that is to prepare emotionally. So I had been a doula for 9 years when I had my first baby. And I had all this knowledge, right? Because I had been doing that for so long. I attended quite a few births at that point. And I had a water birth at home with a midwife. I even took a birth class because I thought that taking a birth class would be fun to do with my husband and I would learn some new things. And we didn't really learn much about pushing and reducing your risk for tears specifically. Like I just learned about pushing, and she kind of mentioned some things about tearing, but like I didn't really learn anything. I want to say first, like people say your first birth is like so hard, and that's just not true. My first birth birth was my easiest. It was 5 hours and it was pain-free for all of active labor. It was an amazing experience. But by the time I felt the pressure overhead coming down, I was like, oh snap, I'm going to tear. I felt so afraid. And it turns out I had a fear of tearing that I wasn't even conscious of. I wasn't aware of that fear. You know about sneaky fear that it's like living in the background and you like don't really know how to address it, or like if it's even like how big of a deal it is. Like I was just really repressing that and keeping it on the back burner. So all this fear came up when it was time to push the baby out, and I flipped and I was like, I'm going to tear, I'm going to tear, I'm going to tear. And I was literally chanting that because I needed some support in the moment, but I had I didn't practice any tools. I had 0 tools. My husband didn't have any tools. He's like, you're a birth doula, you know what to do. I'm just here. And I wanted to ask for help, but I didn't even know how to ask for help. I felt so overwhelmed by the pressure of the baby's head coming down. And it wasn't pain. It was just overwhelming. I was emotionally overwhelmed in that moment because I had fear, and then my fear all got triggered in the moment. And I was like afraid I was going to tear. And so what happened was I skipped over this normal biological process that is meant to support protecting your perineum by having the baby come out 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 2 steps forward. And what that is doing is it's opening the tissue and closing it, and opening the tissue and closing it, and then opening tissue more. And that is how we reduce our risk for tearing. Your tissues are meant to stretch, but slowly. You can't just go from like your normal vagina closed to all the way open 13 to 15 centimeters around, right? Like that without tearing or some kind of perineal trauma. Like that's really, really intense. We want that normal biological process to be intact. We skip over it when we have fear and we choose to add extra force. We skip over it when we don't have an advocacy plan or advocacy tools to protect us from people telling us that we need to push harder. We skip over it when we have a lack of education and support and emotional safety to help us to feel safe, relaxing and releasing and allowing the body to go slow. Birth is the test of ultimate surrender. Your body knows what to do. Your body knows how to bring your baby into the world without tearing. We just get in the way all the time because we want to intervene and mess with nature because we're afraid. And it's not your fault you're afraid. You've been told to be afraid your entire life. I don't care, like wherever in the world you are, everyone is impacted on some level by this like global fear of birth. And all of that can be traced back to the early 1900s when just a few horrible men decided that they were gonna like be the leaders, the fathers of gynecology. These horrible men that were like, birth is all fundamentally flawed and we need to intervene by cutting people and pulling the baby out with forceps and all this stuff. And the world was like, yes, we agree with you. And it's so sad, like looking back, you can see the history of like why everything has happened. But I just want to like really instill in you in this moment, your body was made to bring your baby into the world without tearing. And the best thing that you can do is not learn just like how to do the warm compress on the right position and all this stuff, is to understand your relationship with releasing control. Build relationships with your fear. Get the support and the advocacy and the education, and I can help you with this in our free birth breakthrough session if you want, so that you can create a container that supports you in that moment in having an uninterrupted, normal physiologic delivery of your baby, where what is meant to happen, that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, slowly opening the perineal tissues, where that is left to be allowed to happen. And it's hard to not get in the way. It's hard to not control it, but it works better when we are fighting it less and controlling it less. And we need to feel emotionally prepared to be able to do that. So all the way back to my story, I tore and I had a 2nd-degree tear and I got stitches, and it made recovery really hard. And I felt like my vagina was burning. Like when I would stand up, I felt a lot of pain, and it took a while to recover, and it was really hard to recover. And after that, I was like, like, I don't want to do that again. And I don't understand like why I wasn't more prepared to prevent tearing, having had been a doula for 9 years and also taking a birth class. It wasn't enough. And that's because that model of education, like having information and taking a birth class and having more information, wasn't enough, because information didn't save me in that moment. I needed integrated preparation, and I didn't have that. And then I went on to work for a busy birth center for a few years. And when I was working there, everyone joked that I would never get to learn how to repair a tear because nobody tore. And nobody was tearing because all these midwives were implementing evidence-based tools to help them really reduce their risk for tearing. I was teaching the birth classes, and I was taking more of a personal spin, like teaching a lot more emotional preparation tools, telling moms to go home and practice different emotional preparation things. So the moms were getting a philosophy of their birth education that was really inviting them to consider the emotional preparation and giving them practical tools to try at home, in addition to these midwives really helping them using all these different evidence-based tools to reduce their risk. And people did tear, but probably honestly like 90% did not tear. It was amazing. When I got pregnant with my second, I paused the midwifery. To be pregnant, it's hard to be going to births when you're pregnant. And I was like, I'm not going to tear again. Like, I really need to not tear this time. How am I going to prevent that? So basically what I did is I combined all the evidence-based tools that I learned from my midwifery training, and I combined that with emotional preparation tools that I had just created myself with my husband, trying to figure out like what is going to be the thing that will help me to feel safe, because I know that that was my problem. I didn't feel safe. I had fear, and in that moment I forgot all my knowledge. I had all this knowledge. I knew I was supposed to go slow, but it didn't matter. Like in that moment, it didn't matter. I was like, I want to get this baby out. And so I was like, let's create a plan to address me with my thinking brain turning off, forgetting everything. How am I going to remember to go slow? And so I realized that like, if your thinking brain turns off, what still exists within you? Whatever you've integrated in your body, what lives in your body, that is what exists in that moment. That is what's going to help you remember. And so we integrate through practice. I practice building positive associations to the feeling of pressure. I practice overcoming my fear. I practiced with my husband different specific affirmations to help me to respond to those. Like I built association to them to help me to relax my pelvic floor. When I would hear them, I built a relationship with my pelvic floor. This was like way more somatic. I took a somatic approach instead of an like information approach, a somatic approach. When I felt the pressure of my baby's head coming down, not only did I not tear, I didn't have any pain. I just felt pressure. It was very, very cool. It was just pressure. And pressure in the absence of fear is just pressure. So it didn't hurt, it didn't feel scary, it didn't burn. It was actually one of the coolest experiences of my life. And if you look at my Instagram page, it's Peaceful Birth Method on Instagram. My video is pinned, my birth video, and I was just like, I was in the tub and I was like, he's crowning. He's coming out. Get in and catch the baby. I was just talking as the baby was coming out because I felt so calm and I was in such a state of like just presence with my body. And it was a very, very cool experience. And I didn't tear with my third either. What I'm going to teach you today is a quick overview of these 5 steps. With as much time as we have, I'm going to go over each one. And like I said before, I could spend 2 hours on each one of these steps. So I'm just going to give you all the best information that I can. So number 1 is emotional preparation. So I just gave you an introduction to that. Emotional preparation means that we are creating some kind of a pathway to help us to feel safe in the presence of all that pressure of baby's head coming down. So you could do this through visualization. You could do this through affirmation. You could do this through hearing or writing, different kinds of affirmations. Basically, what you want to do is practice in an ongoing way, associating either the visualization of your baby's head coming down. Just imagine this. Imagine your baby is crowning. Also, write an affirmation. Listen to my birth affirmation track. It's on my podcast, the Peaceful Birth Podcast. You can scroll down a bit, you'll find it. Listen to a birth affirmation track. Listen to something, write something down, visualize. And then when you're doing that, feel in your body the feeling of, my vagina is so stretchy. oh my gosh, I can do this, right? Like what happens is that we don't have control over what comes up for us in pregnancy. Like you might have fear and thoughts come up. What if I tear? What if this happens? Blah. And like that is normal. Everyone has thoughts, everyone has fear, and you can't control that. What you can control is where you put your attention. So what happens is we go into birth and we learn some stuff and then we're like, I hope I don't tear. You have a lot of attention on tearing. If all you're thinking about, if you keep having those thoughts and then you're like, I hope for the best, but like, what if I tear? Your attention is on tearing. Where do we go when we have attention, somewhere? We go towards that thing. It's so interesting. I've seen this so many times. If we have a lot of attention, even if we don't even know we have attention on something, we're more likely to go towards that thing. So what I invite you to do is just explore putting some of your attention on what it is that you want for your pushing experience. How do you want to feel? When you start to put attention on what you want, you begin an upward spiral of positivity. Because if you have a little attention on what you want every day, you're going to start to believe that what you want is possible. If you believe that what you want is possible, you're going to start to begin building confidence. You are literally changing your beliefs and you're changing where you're putting your attention and you're building confidence. And if you do that, by the time you go into labor and you are pushing your baby out, it's possible that the path to just going right back into what you've been practicing, relaxed in the body, like, oh, I can do this without tearing. My body was made to do this. I believe in myself. I believe I can push without tearing. It's much more likely you're going to feel that way because you've practiced feeling that way. If you spend your whole pregnancy like, I hope I don't tear, when that moment comes, you're going to be probably like me with my first and be like, oh no, what if I tear? Because that is what we have been associating that experience with, and that's what we believe. It's hard to know what your beliefs are because they can be so deep. But if you believe you can't birth your baby without tearing, it's probably going to be hard for you to actually birth your baby without tearing because you don't believe that's possible. And we can't control that our society and our mother or whoever it was made us believe that and told us that. But we can work to change our beliefs. So the practice that I will give for all of you, this is general. Typically, I would do something much more personalized with someone in my coaching program that is more connected with them. But in general, find the feeling of what you want to experience for the feeling of pressure building for your baby coming out. If it's peace, relaxation, confidence, I want you to somatically come into your body and feel that in your body. So take some time every day before you get up in the morning, before you go to bed, once a day, take 5 minutes or less, take a few deep breaths and just imagine your baby coming through so easily. Imagine your vulva and perineal tissue stretching so easily with no pain, just feeling all that pressure, and tell yourself wow, my body is so amazing. This is a beautiful experience. I love the feeling of pressure. I love the feeling of pushing my baby out. Just put some attention towards that possibility because that opens that possibility up and can begin you on that journey of that upward spiral of positivity. Let's transition now. So that's a little tool. I have so many tools, but that's a little tool that you can begin with for emotional preparation. So the next piece that I want to talk about is provider hands off. So I had mentioned this before. Provider hands off means that when your baby is coming out, your provider is touching your body and touching your baby. Provider hands off means that they are, I hope I said that right. Provider hands on, they're touching your body, touching your baby. Provider hands off means that they're not. So basically what happens during delivery often is that the baby comes to crown and it'll come to crown fully in one contraction. Sometimes it kind of works its way up to crowning in a few contractions. And then your baby is here at crown. Now that the baby is at crown in a provider hands-on model, what they'll do is that every provider does it a little differently. They'll put their hands on your perineum to protect it. I put that in quotes because that's not evidence-based. And then maybe as the head comes out, They'll push the head down to keep it flexed. Sometimes providers will push actually on the perineum upwards. It's a maneuver that has been researched and shown also isn't evidence-based, but providers believe, some of them believe that this is helpful because that's how they were trained to push on the perineum. And then the baby's head comes out. After the baby's head comes out, the baby is going to rotate. So they turn to the side like this. And when the baby rotates, what they're doing is they're just turning so that the shoulders can be delivered, because a baby can't just like come through the pelvis straight on. If my hands are the pelvis, they can't fit that way. They have to have the head come out, and then they have to turn. If you can kind of see my hand, if you imagine that's the pelvis, if my fingers are the pubic bone, they have to turn, and now they can get under the pubic bone, one shoulder. The one shoulder can get under the pubic bone and the other shoulder can deliver from the tailbone. So when the baby's turned to the side, some providers manually rotate the baby to the side. They'll turn the baby's head. This is unnecessary. The baby will turn on its own. If the shoulders are actually stuck, we will know before it's too late to intervene, if that makes sense, because there are signs. Like if the head, your baby crowns, and then they go up to like the nose and the rest of the head doesn't come out, it kind of gets stuck here and the baby doesn't turn, that means the shoulders are stuck. And we can identify that right away, and then we can help get the baby out. But if the baby comes out and then they turn, the shoulders aren't stuck. So everything's fine. We can let biology continue to do the thing it's meant to do if there are no concerns with baby's heart rate or anything like that. So the shoulders turn, and then in a hands-on model, provider would take their hands and put their hands on the baby's head. And then with their hands on the baby's head, they're just going to pull down. And this pull down, it's called gentle downward traction. They're pushing down to get the top shoulder to clear from the pubic bone. So they push down, and then they also pull up. And sometimes they'll kind of do like a little down, up motion. So this whole idea that we need to touch your perineum, that we need to pull on the baby's head, it's well researched all throughout the world. And what we have found is that provider hands on, so your provider's touching your body, your baby, when your baby is coming out, increases your risk for tearing. And so the reason why it increases your risk for tearing is because it increases your risk for a severe perineal tear from an episiotomy. An evidence-based way to avoid an episiotomy is to birth in an upright position, hands and knees, squatting. Side lying is even better than being on your back. Standing, sitting you can sit on a birth stool. Those positions all decrease your risk for episiotomy. If your provider has access to your perineum, they're more likely to give you an episiotomy. And if you get an episiotomy, you are 22 times more likely to have a severe perineal tear, which means you tear on top of the episiotomy. And like I mentioned before, the episiotomy evidence-based rate is 1%. So we really want to do everything we can to reduce the risk of you getting an episiotomy. It is so rare that is actually a needed thing. So it's like if I was giving someone more personal support, if they said my provider has a high episiotomy rate, I would say like, okay, then it would probably be ideal to try to birth upright and choose provider hands off if that's what you want to do to reduce your episiotomy rate. If your provider's episiotomy rate is below 1%, then, you probably aren't going to be impacted very much by them being hands-on or hands-off. So it's really up to you then what you want to do. I mean, it's always up to you, but there isn't as much of a push, I guess, towards being hands-off if your provider is more evidence-based. But provider like pulling on the baby and things like that can increase the risk for tears. So just important to recognize that you have options. You don't have to have someone pull on your baby when your baby's coming out if you don't want. You can choose to just let the baby come right out with no one catching the baby as long as you're right on the bed. Like if you happen to be on your back, baby can just come out into the bed. If you are in hands and knees or standing, someone should catch the baby, but they can open hand catch the baby. If you trust your doctor or a midwife to open hand, just let the baby come out into their hand and not do any pulling. Other providers, we need to just not let them have access because they can't respect that boundary. You can also have baby come out into your hands if you're kind of in like a lunge. Like I was in a runner's lunge-ish position for all three of my births, and I just like reached down and my second and my third, my husband caught the baby, but my first, I reached down and I caught the baby and it was like really smooth. You could also do that on a hospital bed. If you want to birth in a hospital that's really, really hands-off and you want to have as much self-agency as possible, you can birth in that runner's lunge position where you're facing forward and you're kind of like, you know, on your knees, but one leg is up in a lunge, if that makes sense. And then you can just reach down and catch your baby. And then you kind of have control, like no one can come in behind you because the bed's behind you. Like that's one position parents birth in if they just want a lot of agency in the hospital. But if you have good education and good support and good advocacy, you know, you can always create agency for yourself, even if you are in hands and knees or you want provider to catch the baby and things like that. So this is a really personal experience and there isn't anything wrong with any kind of choice. It's just about choosing what feels best for you. But we want to make our choices known to our support team and our provider and use language in our birth plans that really protect what it is that you want. I teach a birth plan building workshop once a month. If you're in my coaching program, I'll help you create your birth plan. I'll write it for you and I'll send it to you and you'll have a birth plan. The language I recommend using in your birth plan with pushing is I decline episiotomy. I will birth in whatever position I choose. Do not touch my genitals without my verbal consent. And then something around like, I choose provider hands off. I don't consent to you pulling on the baby. Or you could say, I consent to an open hand catch of the baby. Or you can say, you know, or you don't have to say anything and they'll just do what they normally do. But having some like strong language that keeps the power in your hands is a good advocacy tool that you can do beforehand. So we're not having that conversation when you're pushing the baby out, if possible. So that's like a quick overview of provider hands off. The next is a warm compress. And warm compresses are evidence-based tools to reduce the risk for pain and to reduce the risk for a severe perineal tear. So warm compresses basically are taking a washcloth and putting it on your perineum. It's very simple. If you're birthing in the water, there's a similar benefit if you're in warm water. If you're not in warm water, if you're at a home birth, just have a crock pot with washcloths in there and just put it on low and then take the lid off and turn it off when you're pushing and have someone give you a warm compress. If you're in the hospital, just put in your birth plan, I want a warm compress, and then someone can bring you a warm compress if you want. And so what that means is that they're putting the warm compress on your perineum when you're pushing. You could have your nurse do this. You're a doula. If your doula is open to that kind of touch, you could have your partner do this. If you're wanting to avoid your provider being hands-off, if your provider has a high episiotomy rate. If your provider has a high episiotomy rate and they're the only one who could do the warm compress for some reason, it might be better just to forego the warm compress and really keep them away from your body if their episiotomy rate is high, right? But it's up to you. It's just about really weighing those risks and benefits and feeling into what feels most supportive. You could also, for the warm compress, what I recommend doing is having the warm compress be applied. You could do it in between contractions when you're resting or during a contraction. I don't know which one will feel best for you. A lot of moms feel like during a contraction when the baby's coming down and it's stretching a little more, that can feel good to have the warm compress on. When the baby comes to crown, it's hands off. So we're taking the warm compress down, we're doing hands off for the rest of the delivery. Your baby knows how to come out without anyone like being there to like pull and do all this stuff most of the time. So it's okay to like have warm compress and be hands off at that point if you want. And specifically the warm compress has been shown to reduce the ring of fire, which is the burning people talk about. I didn't have the ring of fire at all with my second or third. I had a little bit of burning with my third because he came out in like 2 pushes. It was so fast. But with my second, I didn't have like no burning at all. And I was in the tub for both of them. And I think the water helped a little bit. So, okay, the next is positions. So I already talked a little bit about the reason why we don't want to lie on our back with our legs pulled back because that can add more tension, right, to the perineum. The research and evidence we have on positions for reducing your risk for tears shows that standing and hands and knees and side lying are the 3 best positions to reduce your risk for tearing. Birthing on your back and squatting and sitting, those 3 positions increase the risk for tearing. The reason why squatting and sitting increase the risk for tearing is because there's more pressure on your pelvic floor. If you would get into a squat, you'll feel it and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's hard to do when you're pregnant in the first place, but squatting down really puts a lot of pressure on the pelvic floor. Sitting on the toilet is a great place to push if you're having a hard time holding tension, because when you sit on the toilet, there's basically this like natural pelvic floor release response. So your body will spontaneously kind of relax, and that can really help people with pushing. If you are pushing on the toilet and you feel like your baby's about to come out, just stand up and someone can deliver your baby that way, or like catch your baby, you know? And also if you stand up, then you'll like not have that pressure on your pelvic floor right when the baby's exiting your body. So that's a really good approach for sitting pushing. There are birth stools. There's inflatable, it's called a cub, and the cub is something that is kind of like C-shaped, and people can sit on that too when they're pushing in a hospital. Is hands and knees similar to on knees leaning over the edge of the bed? Yes, hands and knees just basically means that your body is in that kneeling position and you're leaning forward. So you can be in hands and knees in a few different ways. You could be at hands and knees on the floor and hands and knees on the bed. You can be on your knees on the floor, and then you can lean over a couch or lean over a bed or something like that in front of you, lean over your birth ball. If you have an epidural, the best position to push in for most people, especially when it comes to reducing the risk for both a C-section and for tearing, is to be in hands and knees. You can be squatting, hands and knees, and side lie with an epidural. If you have an epidural or not, either way, if you're at a hospital, you can use the hospital bed to your advantage and take the bed and move it down. So the hospital bed, not everyone, but a lot of them move up and down. So if someone moves the hospital bed down kind of like this, you can get your knees here, right? And then your upper body here. So your knees are down and you're leaning over, and you can put pillows or a peanut ball or something for you to lean on. And that allows your upper body to rest, because you could be holding yourself up for hours and hours, maybe after not sleeping all night. I remember my first was pain-free, but it was exhausting. I felt like it was hard work, and I was in hands and knees, either on hands and knees on the floor or leaning over the bed. Like my knees are on the ground and I was leaning over the bed. I was at home, and I remember feeling like this is physically exhausting. Like this is a lot of work holding myself up so much, but it was worth it. So with hands and knees, that is one that I definitely recommend you give a try and see how it feels. What I love about hands and knees so much for pushing is that if you have been pushing in hands and knees for a little bit, there was a mama who I just supported in my coaching program. She had her baby a few weeks ago and she had a really great birth, but she pushed for quite a long time. And we were talking about it later and like, why were you pushing for so long? And realized that she just really was like unwilling to move. She was in this just hands and knees position leaning over the tub, and she still had like this super incredible, smooth, pretty fast birth too for her first baby. But she had this long pushing phase, and we realized it's because her pelvis was just chilling in this same position like this the whole time, you know, because she wasn't like moving at all. But if we move, you know, throughout pushing, we can open the pelvis in different areas and support the baby and having more space in this area and this area to help them kind of like wiggle their way through the pelvis. So if you are pushing in hands and knees, you could just, with an epidural or without an epidural, have someone take a leg with an epidural. If not, you can lift your own leg, lift a leg up, and now you're in a lunge. And I have a video for this, and I'm creating videos now for the people in my coaching program of exactly what to do if you have a long pushing phase, exactly what to do if they say your baby is up high, exactly what to do if they say your baby is asynclitic, tilted to the side. Because if you know what to do in these situations, we can prevent C-sections. With pushing specifically, if you push for a really long time and then we're like worried that baby's not fitting or whatever, that can like really increase the risk for a C-section. That does happen to people. So just knowing how to address that moment is really important, and having that knowledge. So a tip for that would be put one leg up into a lunge and push for 5 minutes like that. Put the other leg up into a lunge, push for 5 minutes, and then bring that leg down. You could also do internal rotation where you point your knees towards each other. And when your knees are pointed towards each other, it actually opens the pelvic outlet where the baby is leaving. So this part of the pelvis here actually expands and gets bigger. This pelvis isn't super flexible, but that part will get bigger so that baby has a little more space to exit and then go back to neutral. So you can add variety in a hands and knees position with or without an epidural to support pushing progress, which is really, really rad. So that is some support or some education with positions. To end, we're going to talk about number 5, which is perineal massage. So perineal massage is often something that is conveyed to parents as a tool for them to use, that it should be like uncomfortable, right? And what happens is parents like push themselves really hard to try to like endure all this discomfort because they don't want to experience discomfort later. No, queen, don't do that. Please don't do that. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I don't want you to build associations to your vagina that are unhappy or uncomfortable, because what the perineal massage process does is it offers us this opportunity to create positive associations to the feeling of pressure. And this is way more important than just doing perineal massage and trying to stretch. Research says that a first-time parent will have benefit and reduce their risk for tearing if they do perineal massage in pregnancy. You start at 35 weeks and do it about 2 times a week until you have your baby. Perineal massage in labor, meaning someone's fingers in your vagina and they're massaging like this to stretch the tissue, can be helpful on a case-by-case basis if someone has some really like tight tissue that isn't releasing. Most of the time that isn't beneficial. We have no good quality research. I don't care what anyone else says. I've heard many OBs say perineal massage during labor is so effective. It's not. It has not been shown in research to be effective. I wonder if you just have a hard time keeping your hands out of people's vaginas. No one needs to stretch your vagina open. Your baby will stretch your vagina open. We have research on perineal massage that's such bad quality, it's just not evidence-based. We have research on perineal massage in populations where the episiotomy rate is 80%. And of course, if someone has an 80% episiotomy rate as a provider, they're doing perineal massage, they have something else to do with their hands, and it's going to reduce their risk for giving you an episiotomy. But in that population, that study doesn't apply to populations like in the US, where the episiotomy rate is between 1 and 15%, depending on what provider you have and what hospital you're in. We don't have any good quality research on a population with a 15 and below percent episiotomy rate that says that perineal massage during pushing is evidence-based, if that makes sense. Maybe new research will come out probably at some point, but right now it isn't evidence-based. And since we know that provider hands-on increases your risk for tearing, most of the time I would say it is better to just have the hands be out of the vagina when you're pushing your baby out. Perineal massage in pregnancy is something that you do where you take your fingers and you put them inside probably your thumb. If you're doing it yourself, you'd stand up, put your leg up, use your thumb and reach inside, and you would just push down a little bit, massage a little bit this way, do a gentle little pull, massage a little bit the other way, and do a gentle little pull. So you're kind of working around the bottom part of the clock, just doing gentle massages, gentle stretches. What I want you to do it with yourself or do it with your partner. Make it sexy. Give yourself an orgasm. Make yourself feel so yummy, ooey gooey good. And if you're doing it with your partner, take sex off the table. So we're not having sex. This isn't about sex. This is about your pleasure and you developing a positive association to the feeling of pressure. I want you to feel the pressure of this new sensation of pressure, right, of someone doing this little bit of perineal massage or yourself. Relax. Imagine your baby coming out like we did before and do that practice. Wow, my vagina is so stretchy. Feel relaxed in your body. Have your partner tell you, go slow, go slow. So we're imagining the baby's coming out and we're choosing to go slow. We're feeling the pressure of a finger or a tool. There's perineal massage tools you can use. You don't need to. You can just use a finger or a thumb. Doing that stretch. And imagine like allowing your whole body to just like relax in that moment. Go into the pressure instead of resisting it. Like under pressure, go into it. Use olive oil. I don't want anyone to be like, we could only do a tiny stretch and it was really uncomfortable. How am I going to be able to like handle the whole baby coming out? When you are pushing your baby out, your body assumes a different physiology. You are in the physiology for a baby to exit your body. On a normal Tuesday, you are not in the physiology for like someone to expand your vagina that wide, right? Like, so don't feel wigged out if you notice that like it's kind of uncomfortable if you want to try to do more fingers or anything like that. Like just start really small and gentle. Don't go beyond, don't push yourself. Only do what feels pleasurable. Be curious. Oh, I can experience more pressure. Add a little more pressure. Wow, like it's just pressure. You know what I mean? We're exposing you to pressure in a positive, loving, maybe sexy, sensual, loving, warm container where you feel yummy, ooey gooey good, where your pleasure is being centered. If you don't want to do it on the bed, do it in the shower. have your partner in front of you, put your body into their body and cuddle up to them, put your leg up on the bathtub and have them reach their thumb or finger down and just do a little bit of clitoral stimulation, or you use a vibrator and then they can like insert a finger and just do a little bit of pressure, or you could just do pressure. You don't have to do clitoral stimulation. The point is that we want to introduce that birth and the experience of baby coming out of your body does not have to be scary. It does not have to be painful. It does not have to be something that you're like forcing yourself to endure discomfort for, to prepare to hopefully not have this like scary outcome. Instead, we're choosing to believe that our bodies are made to do this. Yes, we're choosing to believe that we deserve pleasure, that birth can be one of the most beautiful experiences of our life. And we're choosing to say yes to this experience, say yes to our pleasure, positive, happy associations to that feeling. That is like, I could talk about perineal massage for forever, but that is like my quick little rundown of it, just to hopefully give you an idea of a different approach. That this is something that I just like came up with, and I find it really, really helpful for helping people go into that moment and they feel the pressure of baby coming down and they go, oh, I've practiced this. This is just a level up in intensity, but I've practiced this before. And you have your body's physiology, all the secretions, all the blood flow, all of that is on your side and helping you in that moment.